are unfortunately gone, which is why half our audience is not here today. We have Matt Koidin, who is behind me here, Fuqua 05. He's also a Stanford undergrad. He actually will tell you his story, so I won't go into that, but you do have kind of a little blurb here on the back of your schedule sheet here. And he is going to be speaking to slides there, so I'm going to advance those. And you guys are ready to go. So let me just go over a couple of dates coming up. Just let me go over a couple things. So first of all, we've videotaped all the past sessions from this year. So Jason Friedman, Howard Liu, Ryan Spoon. And so those are up on YouTube, and you can get to them from DukeGEN.com if you want to check out some of those talks. Those are really good. And then our next event, which is on the schedule here, is the registration for the elevator pitch competition. The 6th annual elevator pitch competition. Last year we had 66 teams. The year before we had 70 teams, and we're on track for having about the same this time as well. So I hope you all think about pitching there. You can win $5,000, and it just takes 1 minute to pitch. And actually, the last thing I want to say on top of that is whether or not you pitch, I hope you'll come to the finals event, which is November 18th. Last year we had about 450 people in attendance. And this year we're bringing Will Pearson, who's Trinity 01. You're waving to people, Matt?
I just realized that you can see me.
Okay. Will Pearson, who's Trinity 01, and he started Mental Floss magazine while he was still a student here. So John, just want to make sure you're ready to go? All right. Well, Matt, I'm just going to turn it over to you since you're going to be telling your story. Let's give him a hand. He can hear you.
Thanks, everyone. I think you just saw that my fellow teammates were making fun of me in here, and I didn't realize I was on video. But in any event, thank you for joining me, and thanks to Howie for inviting me. And hopefully you'll find this interesting. I titled it, I don't think Howie has the title slide up, but I titled it 10 Thoughts on Entrepreneurship. I don't think there's any real lessons necessarily. I think or rules, I would say, but hopefully you can maybe learn a little bit about some reflections I have about my career and the companies that I've been a part of, the companies I've started, and what I've learned from that. So if we're looking at the slide that says one path of an entrepreneur,
yes.
Again, I don't think there's any one way to do this. This is how I happen to do it, and how I am doing it still to this day. And I wanted to just, I want to get by this slide pretty quick, but I thought it would be useful, since most of you don't know me at all, to give you a little bit of the background so that the kind of lessons and thoughts I have kind of going forward have some context. I grew up in Boston. I was kind of the neighborhood computer kid. I always, I guess in that respect, was a little entrepreneurial. Always was kind of making money on the side, fixing my neighbors' computers and all that type of fun stuff. I was technical from the get-go, and I went to Stanford for college kind of because I wanted to study computer science, and that is what I ended up studying when I was there. And so I was at Stanford from 96 to 2000. In the summer of 98, I did a summer internship at Microsoft, and that was a pretty big summer for me for two reasons. One, at the time, it's hard to think of it now, I guess, in some respects, but Microsoft was kind of the pinnacle job for, if you were doing computer science back then, Microsoft was the place you wanted to work. It was kind of this amalgam of what Google and Facebook is today, except if there were no other options in some ways. So I was pretty excited about it from that perspective. And I was, in hindsight, it was a pinnacle summer for me because I met my roommate that summer was a guy who actually would become my partner for two future businesses. So that summer kind of really got things going. And when we came back to school, for my junior year, I took an entrepreneurship class. It was a high technology entrepreneurship class, and it was about kind of it was the first year it was offered, and it was kind of this idea of can we start to teach entrepreneurship? And I think a lot of what Duke does now and some of the stuff that Howie's involved with, some of the stuff that I'm sure a lot of you are involved with, this was 15 or 1998, so 1999. So there wasn't a lot of that in place right then. This was kind of the beginning stages of it. And our final project was to take an idea that we had and do an opportunity analysis, decide if we thought it was a good idea. And we came up with this idea that ultimately we thought was a good idea, and we decided after the class to actually try to make something of it. And that idea was what became a company called Just Arrive. It was my first startup, and it was basically an e-ticketing company for sports. So the way to think about it is when you go on airplanes today and you go to travel and you get your e-ticket at the kiosk by swiping your credit card or whatever it happens to be, we were basically doing something similar for sports stadiums and sporting events. And we added on top of it a bunch of targeted marketing components and ability to transfer your tickets to your friends using your computer and sell them on a secondary market and earn loyalty points for attending games. It's a lot of stuff that seems kind of commonplace now, but it was actually pretty innovative back in 1999, and we were one of the first groups doing it. We raised $5 million from a VC. We grew the team, ultimately spent $5 million, and went out of business in 2001. So lots of lessons learned there, which we'll get to. And the company's still around, and a lot of what we pioneered is still in practice. So certainly I got a lot out of that experience. That led me to the next company, SmartTix. It also led me to New York. And then ultimately, and SmartTix was another startup in a similar space. Ultimately, I decided in 2003 that I wanted to kind of fill in the gaps a little bit and went back to Fuqua for business school. Or went to Fuqua for business school. And the story I kind of tell there was I had done a lot of stuff hands-on. I'd been in the board meetings. I'd seen the kind of balance sheets and the income statements and stuff like that. But I didn't really know, other than that the number looked good or bad, what kind of went into it. And I felt like getting some more background in some of stuff like finance and marketing would make me a better entrepreneur overall. After business school, I was kind of burnt out, to be perfectly blunt, on startups and kind of that whole thing. And so I decided to do some strategy consulting. I went and worked at Deloitte, which probably seems a little bit of a weird turn for someone who, kind of does startups and stuff. But it actually worked. In hindsight, I learned a lot there about how to manage projects, how to hit deliverables and deadlines, managing people. And now that I've kind of done a couple startups since then, I actually realize how important a lot of that stuff is to being successful. So, I think the lesson there a little bit is, take what it's not always, the direct path that works out, and you can kind of learn a lot from, wherever you happen to kind of end up. In 2007, I started thinking about getting back into working for startups and kind of decide I wanted to build stuff instead of tell people what I thought they should build. I moonlighted for a few startups and then ultimately ended up hooking up with a couple guys I knew from my freshman dorm way back at Stanford and started a company called TeamRankings.com, which was a sports data and analytics company. So we kind of approached the sports market like it was a financial market and gave people advice on how to kind of make smarter decisions in that market. So whether they're filling out March Madness brackets or gambling on games or doing fantasy sports, that sort of thing. And that was a very different type of startup. That was something that we took a little bit of friends and family money, but we didn't go the VC route, and we largely bootstrapped it. And kind of grew it as what I call more of like a small business than actually a kind of startup. It kind of sounds crazy, but we spent what we made and kind of grew much more organically. And then in May of this year, I had an opportunity to join with a guy who actually had worked with me previously, who had this little side project called Read It Later. That he had been kind of working on for a couple of years, and it just kind of started growing like gangbusters and got to the point where he couldn't do it just himself anymore. And so I joined him in May, and we raised a Series A round of funding in June, and now we're we have 6 people, and we're kind of going for it again. And that's much more of a kind of faster pace kind of startup. So I've had kind of experiences along the way with a bunch of different things. And Read It Later, just as a quick background, is we're kind of building a TiVo for the web. So the idea is that people send you articles or videos, and you don't always have time to read them right when someone sends it to you, or right when you discover it on the web. And we basically allow you to kind of send it to. We have an app for any of your devices, whether it's an iOS device, iPad, iPhone, Android. And basically you save it into your queue, and it's there for you whenever you want to consume it, whether it's on your commute, when you're in bed at night, catching up. We sync everything all together. It works online or offline. And so it's a way to kind of just shift your content to when you want to consume it. Howie, we can hit the next slide.
Yep. There.
So I broke this up into basically 10 kind of thoughts, and the first section is about thoughts on people, because I think that's a core component of startups and being an entrepreneur, and then thoughts on just generally kind of the startup business. Next slide. This is a picture of myself and the three other co-founders of Just Arrive when we were much younger. The kind of first message is that entrepreneurship is a team sport, that working with people you trust and is really kind of a key to being successful. And I run into people a lot of times, kind of trying to do a lot themselves. And my experience is that you can certainly start things yourself, but ultimately there's just way too much to do. And if your goal is to kind of really grow the business and not just have it be kind of a side project type thing, finding people that you trust and that you can work with on it is really imperative. And I think that the guys in this picture, the other kind of lesson from Just Arrive, when we were kind of getting going with it, is I was, one reason I did it was I was really excited about the idea. So I was passionate about what we had come up with and what we were trying to do. But I was also really excited about working with these three guys, because I just thought they were the types of guys that were going to do something interesting with their lives. And I kind of figured I might as well be there when they do that. Part of it was, the startup is kind of a ride a little bit, and you want to kind of get on that ride with people you kind of are excited about being with. We can hit the next slide.
Yep.
So this is George Clooney back, I don't know how many years on the one side, and more recent on the right. It was the best picture I could find to make this point. But when we first went to raise money for Just Arrive, we were about 22, 23 years old. And while it might be a little more common then, we ran up against this, one of the critiques, everyone loved the idea, but we constantly ran into this critique of, well, you guys have never done this before. How are you going to kind of do this? And to kind of our credit, we were always pretty open to the idea of bringing in more experienced people, and we knew that we weren't in it to kind of be CEO or have the titles necessarily. We were in it to kind of see the idea kind of become a reality. And I think we knew as well that if we were successful in doing that, kind of all the benefits that we wanted to come along with it would have been there. And so the problem so we were kind of open to hiring experienced people. The long story short of it, though, is if you're going to hire more experienced people to help you out, you want to make sure you hire good people. And we were, at the time, we kind of the idea was, oh, we want to hire us just 10 years more experienced. So that, the same type of, we felt like we had the kind of right, core skills, but we just didn't have the experience. If we found us, but 10 years older and 10 years more experienced, then we'd be kind of ready to rock. And in hindsight, now that I am more than 10 years older than I was back then, I actually do tend to agree. One of the kind of key problems with what happened with Just Arrive was, we didn't find those people. We kind of, when you're a 22, 23-year-old kid and you look at a resume, pretty much everyone's resume looks better than yours. And so we hired the wrong people, and that ultimately, caused problems for us later on. Next slide. So working with friends. Typically, the advice is don't work with your friends. I'm actually not going to say that. I've actually had a lot of success with it. It can certainly be complicated, and I think you have to go into it with your eyes wide open about what you are doing, and it's really important, especially if you're in the role of kind of founder or boss, and there's it's not just you're hiring people not just to be your co-founders, but kind of employees. That relationship can get tricky, and it's important to kind of separate your work life from your personal life and be upfront with those people and honest about that there is going to be a split, that there's going to be some things that you're involved with that you can't always kind of talk about or whatever it happens to be. In my experience, I would say, I guess 3 out of the 4 startups I've worked with, I've known the people quite well ahead of time and hired people that I knew ahead of time. At Just Arrive, this picture is of the Just Arrive team at pretty much as big as it got. And, of our 8 best hires we made at Just Arrive, 6 were people I knew ahead of time. And of those 6, 4 were from Stanford. And I think that, that really brings it home for you at Duke, where Duke is just such a huge resource for you. You happen to be friends with just really talented people. You could go look elsewhere for, the talent, but the reality is they're probably already there. And they're probably already people that, you socialize with and stuff. So I think that's a huge advantage. And I think, there's no reason not to use it. Next slide. And the reason to use it is because you can't do everything yourself. Kind of building on the last couple of ideas have been about the team and working with other people and stuff like that. And I think one of the hardest things for me to learn as I kind of grew up in these companies was that I couldn't be in every meeting and I couldn't make every decision, and I had to kind of trust the people that I hired or partnered with. And it's really hard to do, but it is made easier if you have confidence in the people that you're hiring and the people that you're working with. Here in this office, at our offices right now in Rio Later, in one of the other rooms, a bunch of the team is getting together doing some design reviews for the next version of our product. And that's actually something that's interesting to me because I'm passionate about what we're doing and what's going to come next. But I also feel comfortable not being in that room, that the kind of right critiques and the right decisions are going to kind of be made. And that's really freeing, when you're in a startup to kind of get to that level of confidence in your team. And I think that really should be kind of the goal. If you find yourself constantly worrying about what's going on, I think that's a signal sometimes that, you might not have the right people involved. So that ends the people section, I guess. The next section, you can probably skip the next 2 slides, I guess. But the next is more kind of general around startups. And the first. So Howie, are we on number 5 now?
Yes, yes we are.
So this is mostly an excuse just to have a picture of my daughter up on the screen. But I thought it's an interesting picture with me on the old iPhone there. And I think it makes the point around, kind of time management and what happens with, the rest of your life when you're trying to do this. And, I don't buy into, you'll see there's been some studies and stuff like that around, what's the average age of successful entrepreneurs and all that type of stuff. And I don't think there's any hard and fast rule to it. But I will say that school is, or as you're coming out of school, is a good time to do this. What you lack in experience, you do kind of make up for in terms of, you don't have all these other responsibilities that are kind of competing for your time in your life. And you're also used to really working hard. There's not really like this 9 to 5 type schedule with school. If there's a paper due Monday, chances are you're working on it Sunday night. And I think that kind of mentality is really good for a startup. When we were kind of coming out and doing Just Arrive, we'd work 6 days a week, and kind of one night we'd go out and have fun and then we kind of burn the midnight oil the rest of the week. And I remember it got to a point where I'd wake up on a Saturday and I'd just like automatically go into the office. And one Saturday I was in there, I was like, wait a second, what? Like, I don't have anything to do today. Why am I here? And it was just like this automatic kind of thinking. There was no real balance. And while not having that balance is certainly a bad thing, it can work to your benefit as you're kind of getting going, because there's just so much to do when you're kind of trying to build a company. Next slide. Yep. So, as I mentioned up at the top, there's I've actually financed startups a couple different ways, and there's a lot of different ways to do it, and I don't want to get into a whole financing discussion here, although I'm happy to answer any questions on it if we want to kind of go that path. But I've done VC and angel investment. I've done friends and family. I've bootstrapped. I've done the kind of build a profitable business and spend what you make approaches, and they're all different, and they all have their kind of pros and cons, and a lot of it is matching what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to go after, if it's really important, if you're kind of let's say like Groupon, and you're trying to or one of these kind of Groupon clones trying to go after that market, it's going to be hard. That's going to cost you money, right? That's a sales type business. You're not going to be able to bootstrap that. You're going to need to raise a bunch of money and try to go that path. But there's other types of companies that don't require VC money, and VC money, kind of only complicates things and changes the kind of dynamics of what you're trying to do and what you're kind of focused on. So, I would, the advice, I guess, is to really, kind of do the research to learn about what you're getting into before you go down any one path, and don't just kind of assume that there's this like typical path where you start a company, you build a prototype, you raise VC money, and go there, because I think there's a lot of different ways to go about it. Next slide. Along those lines, I don't believe in stealth mode at all. So the idea that you fire up, before you talk to anyone about what you're doing, you have them sign an NDA and all that. In fact, that's a total turnoff to me. I think that there are cases where it makes sense, hence the asterisk. If you're doing something truly innovative, around kind of building a new chip or something like that, then sure, there might be reason not to kind of broadly tell people what you're doing. But my experience has been that you gain so much by sharing your ideas and talking to people and getting their, their thoughts, their connections, like, oh, you should talk to this, oh, you're working on that, oh, you should talk to this person, or someone knows what you're doing and they see something and fire it your way, a week later or whatever it happens to be. And I've seen much more positive come out of that type of sharing than negative. Oh, this person's going to steal my idea, or something like that. I haven't really seen that happen. So I think you have a lot to gain by being open and talking to people. Next slide. So this one, given that my current company is all about helping you kind of consume content whenever you want, this one might seem a little weird, I guess, but it's really this one's really important. It's so easy to sit back these days and kind of read a bunch of articles and watch some videos about startups or some type of technique or whatever it happens to be. But that's not going to make you an entrepreneur. And this is, one of those things where you need to kind of get out there and get the reps in, and try to build something. It doesn't have to be, amazing the first time, but just kind of going through the process, and trying some things out and kind of learning, what all the different steps are, as you go. That's what's going to make it work for you. You're not going to, you can, reference things and you can learn things and get tips and all that, but until you actually kind of get out there and start doing things, it's not going to, ultimately kind of work. So I think that one's pretty important. In the next slide, kind of building on that a little bit, you always hear about the long hours that startups require. And there's so much to do that it's really easy to get caught up sometimes in the hours and kind of just putting the time in and not really realizing that maybe you're not working on the right things. You can look back every day that, because there's no, when you do a startup, there's no real infrastructure in place. Like when you go work at a big company, there's all this infrastructure in place and they kind of set you up to, get going on things. And with the startup, there's really not that. So, in addition to kind of working on your product, there's all these other things you can be working on. And you can look back on every day and be like, wow, I worked so much today. I got a lot done. But if you aren't doing the right things, you might not really be advancing your product forward or going after that market, or whatever, kind of building value for the business. And so I think it's important to really, continually evaluate things. Take the time to take the step back and look at the big picture and focus yourself and your team. And what you decide is the right, moves to be making one week may change the next week, based on kind of what the results of those moves were. So the kind of shorter cycles, measuring the results of what you're doing and really kind of iterating through on and taking the step back is really important. And that's something that I think I've learned. I'm much better at that now than I was back, when I started. We would spend half a day kind of making sure the color of the logo was the right shade or something stupid like that. And, I don't know, maybe someone would argue with me, but I don't think that really was what was defining the success or failure of our business. So, the hours, you're going to put the hours in, but I think it's important to make sure they're kind of the right hours, if that makes sense. And then the final point, this was kind of the biggest lesson that I learned from Just Arrive. And it's about building a business, not a company. And those words aren't the same, at least not to me. At Just Arrive, we did a lot of things right, but it was we ultimately made some mistakes. And one of the big mistakes was after we raised the money, we had this $5 million, and we were like, okay, well, now we have the money. We need to go build our company. And so we built, a sales group, and we had like an East Coast sales and a West Coast sales, and we had a marketing group and a product management group, and kind of like as you see on the slide, kind of like your classic structured company. But what we didn't realize was that for the business that we were in, we didn't need all of that. It was sports is a pretty incestuous business in the sense that if you do something really great for the San Francisco Giants, the next year all the other teams are going to want it. So we didn't need an East Coast sales office and a West Coast sales office and and all these different people. We for the company that we grew to 30 people, we probably could have gotten just as far, and if not a lot further, let's say with 10 or 12 people, and that would have meant we had a lot more money to kind of keep us going when the bubble crashed and all that type of stuff. So a business is listening to your customers and really focusing on what market you're in and building things to kind of address that particular market and those particular customers. A company is kind of for the show and tell, to kind of say, hey, I got I have this great company. We have, it's all about the number of employees you have, and and stuff like that. And ultimately, that's not going to. I don't think that's going to get you there. So I think it's really important to focus on the business, focus on the market, focus on your customers. So that's I guess those are the thoughts. What I wanted to do was, make sure I left plenty of time to. I covered a lot right there, but basically, be able to answer your questions, and can talk in more detail about any one of the different kind of experiences or anything like that.